Okay, good morning. This is Neil McGurk. I'm the Division Disaster Director in the state of Texas for the Swarm Division. We are going to be talking today about the newly released Respond framework, and I'm also going to give you guys some updates to our concept of operations, where we stand on that, as well as our sort of an update to where we stand on some of the other initiatives that are working within the disaster cycle services. So I am recording today's session, so I do ask a few favors. One, if you, I ask that everyone please make sure your phone is on mute by pressing *6. But also, if you have to take a call, if you receive an incoming call during the presentation, please do not place the call on hold, or else we'll listen to whatever wonderful hold music that you have, and so that'll really disrupt the call. So please just disconnect and then dial back in. So. Also, we are going to have an opportunity throughout the presentation to ask questions. We'll have a big sort of open forum at the end for anyone who has anything. But also, if you do have questions during the presentation, please ask them through the chat feature. That way I can, I'll refer back to the chat feature several times throughout the presentation just to make sure we're getting all the questions answered. Do know that due to the fact that I'm recording my screen, whatever questions you send me, through the chat feature will be recorded as part of the overall presentation. So just be aware of that. But I will, as soon as we get questions, I'll address them as they come up. So again, thank you guys for taking the time to join us. We'll be here probably for the hour, but we will make sure that we're done by 11 a.m. So 11 a.m. Central for those of you who are in this time zone. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the agenda of what we're going to be covering. We're going to be talking about the Respond framework, which was just released a week or two ago. We're going to talk about sort of the update to our concept of operations. Back in the spring and early summer, we pushed out our concept of operations training that was across the division, which was part of a nationwide initiative to push that training on our new structure, the new incident action planning process, all of that. So we're going to be pushing that out, and you'll get some more information about that here during this presentation about the status of that within the organization. And then I'm going to give you guys some updates on some disaster cycle services things. So new things that are going to be released in August and September, some new initiatives, things like that, just to make sure that we're all working on the same playbook and know where we stand with the direction that we're moving within disaster cycle services. So if everyone could please press *6 to mute your phones. So the Respond framework was, I believe, released. It was posted to the exchange about a week or two ago. Now, I understand, and we've all got a lot on our plates right now, so I understand if most people haven't, taken the time to read the document. This is the purpose of this call, to give you guys an overview of the Respond framework, but I do encourage you guys to really go and read the document, because it really will set the foundation for how the Red Cross is going to be working in the response environment moving forward. So the Respond framework is really just a foundational document for what the Respond services program will do within the American Red Cross. It doesn't get into, procedural issues. It's very high level, and it's designed to be that way. It's the foundation document that the other program job tools and procedure documents will support. So it sets that picture, that framework for what the Respond program is going to look like in the American Red Cross moving forward. And if you could please make sure to press *6 to mute your phones. Just 1 second, I've got a feature here in my system. I can go in and mute lines too. Okay. So the Respond framework is also, it gives a common understanding. It's designed for everyone within the organization to have an understanding of how we're going to be providing services and what services in general we're going to be providing through our programs. The entire reengineering effort is really designed to, as you know, bring the Red Cross and ensure that everyone within the Red Cross is using the same playbook. This is our foundational document for our playbook for how we respond to disasters. So the framework also exists for each of our core processes. So we have a framework that's already out for the recovery program. And the Prepare program framework is going to be released here, scheduled to be released in September, and we'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in just a moment. But this is the framework for the Respond component of our core processes. So in general, the Respond framework outlines what we do. In general, the services that we provide in a response environment. So we're not talking about before the disaster. We're not talking about in the recovery side. We've got those frameworks that cover those areas. But these are the general services that we will provide in a response environment. This is all the way from, our single-family fire program all the way up to our catastrophic type events. These are the services that we provide under that Respond umbrella. So the first one is going to be our home fire response services. This is our disaster action teams. And this is just the umbrella that fits the disaster action teams and things like that. So the terminology disaster action team is not going away. It's just the general bucket in which all of those activities work in is generally called the home fire response services. So that's one of the main services we provide. We obviously are going to continue providing sheltering, so mass care services, that core component of that mass care. What you will see is that there will be a greater direction within the organization to ensure that we're providing sheltering consistently to all communities around the country in a consistent manner. So again, we're still providing sheltering. We're still providing that same kind of service. Same thing with feeding. We're still going to be providing feeding. We just want to ensure that as you start to see new procedures, tools that are to be developed, we'll ensure that we're providing feeding in a consistent manner around the country so that we're operating as one Red Cross and not, dozens of different Red Crosses around the country. Also, health services, health and mental health services will continue to be key components of services that we provide. Also, spiritual care services. This is something we're going to be doing some education on moving forward, because I know spiritual care services is something that is somewhat of an enigma to most of us, myself included. Okay, it's just not something that we typically deal with on a day-to-day basis. But we do have some really good folks within the organization that have a lot of expertise on spiritual care services and how and when spiritual care services need to be engaged in an operation. So we're going to be working to help educate everyone and provide sort of those informational resources on spiritual care in the upcoming months here in the Swarm Division. Also, reunification. So, identifying and trying to unify people after disasters. So we use some of our tools. We've got Safe and Well websites. We have, other welfare inquiries and things like that we do. But the main service that we provide is reunification. And then direct client assistance. This is not the recovery component of our client assistance, but this is our direct client assistance that we offer during the Respond phase, that initial casework, that initial financial assistance, and other types of assistance that we offer. This is the core component of our Respond program. Again, longer-term recovery gets into the recovery framework, and we'll talk about how that overlaps between response and recovery here coming up shortly. And then the distribution of relief supplies, so bulk distribution. We're still going to go out with the herbs and do feeding and distribute supplies and all of those types of things. And then finally, information and referrals. So making sure that people have access, individuals, families, and communities have access to information that's going on in the operation. We can also try to hook them up with our partners and other organizations that are providing services. So what you can see here within the Respond framework, it outlines what we're doing here is we're outlining and defining exactly what we've done in the past. So there's really, from a core foundational perspective, there is nothing within the Respond things that is changing from a foundational perspective. What we do anticipate to see, over the next, months and years is just ensurement that the organization is alignment with how we provide each one of these services. So that a sheltering program in New York looks the same as one in Oregon and those types of things. And again, they'll need to be tailored for their individual community, but they will have some core processes and performance metrics that will need to be built in and ensure that it's built into each and every program. So these are the services that we're going to continue providing to the Red Cross. What you may see is the method and methodology for some of these things may be tweaked along the way, but that's really done to ensure that we're all operating under the same rhythm as an organization. And as we have more of that information coming out, we'll be sure to share it. There will be opportunities as well to provide feedback and input on a number of these things as they're being developed. So now within the response framework, I'm going to talk about a little bit of roles and responsibilities between national headquarters, the divisions, the regions, and the territories. Because this is out of anything within all of our re-engineering efforts, the roles and responsibilities that we all have in the organization it's very important that we understand what role we play, because we're all working together as one organizational team, and we all have different functions and responsibilities. So we all need to ensure that we're working at that approach, knowing what this is my role and responsibility, and how can I do this in the best possible way to ensure the success of the organization. So it's important that, as we start talking about program development and execution of programs, it's important to know that everyone has a role to play, and we all need to sort of focus and ensure that we're playing that role to the best of our ability, and that will, again, support the organization as a whole, which will in turn support our clients and our mission. So the role of national headquarters is to develop, measure, and improve response program components. So that is really the core component of national headquarters. They are there to develop doctrine, to ensure that we're measure performance on a national perspective, and then to improve. As feedback is coming back from the territories, regions, and the divisions, they're there to improve those programs to ensure they're operating most efficiently. And then they also provide oversight for operations with national impacts or implications. These are going to be our large-scale operations. They could be, a hurricane, a multiple-state tornado, severe weather event, those types of things, so on a large scale. But on a smaller scale perspective, incidents with national implications are also going to be, mass casualty disasters, so a plane crash. Another example was, the Boston bombing, even though that was impacting just the Boston area, it had national implications, so it was overseen by our national headquarters. Those are the types of things we'll be working on. But then the national headquarters will also be seeking, collecting, and evaluating feedback from the divisions on program implementation to ensure that we're working and providing these programs in the most efficient manner as possible. And so what you're going to see is there is a tiered approach to how feedback is shared and how programs are designed out. So it's sort of a stepping stone approach. So the national goes to the divisions for feedback. The divisions will go to the regions for feedback, and the regions will go to territories for the feedback. And the feedback is shared the same way, just back up that chain. So the national headquarters has a responsibility to work with the divisions to get the feedback, and we'll talk about how that works in the divisions and regions here coming up. I'm going to check the chat feature. So far we've got no questions, but if you do have questions that come up, please ask them in the chat box, and we will have an opportunity for an open forum at the end of the call. So Red Cross Division, sort of the roles and responsibilities of the division in the new Respond framework. So the divisions are accountable for leading and managing our division capability work groups and our division response management teams. Now, we've pushed out documents around it, but I know there's a lot of stuff coming out, so I'll just really quickly go over what each one of those are. The division capability work groups is really a blue sky component of the division. They are there across 10 different groups that are there to provide support programmatically to regions. So we've got a group on prepare, and a group on respond, and a group on information management and situational awareness, those types of things. And these are made up of individuals, volunteers and employees from the regions and from the territories that are there to work at a divisional perspective to help assist the regions and the territories and ensuring they have implemented successful programs. So the capability work groups are there 100% as support mechanism for the regions. The division response management team is the gray sky component of that support structure. So this is the division response management team is, we've got 3 within the division, and each of those teams are made up of a director, a deputy director, and then ADs for external relations, logistics, operations, planning, and then finance. And those teams are really designed to supplement regional gray sky operations if they're needed, or to run operations that really exceed sort of regional capacity and then go beyond regional levels. So if we've got a disaster that impacts multiple regions, or if really they need leadership individuals to come in and help mentor and guide some of the local leadership that we have on the ground. Those teams are there, again, as support structure to the regions and to the territories from a gray sky perspective. And then the Red Cross divisions are also responsible for overseeing and managing relief operations that go beyond the regional capacity and the regional scale, but are not national level disasters. So these typically, in our frame of reference, these are going to be our level 3 and level 4 disasters. There's some gray area in that, so don't stick to that as a key, but in general, that's our level 3 and 4 disasters of the operations that the division will have responsibility for sort of oversight and management. Doesn't necessarily mean that the DRMT or the division members will come in and directly run that operation. We just have there to provide oversight, support, and leadership to whoever is running that operation. And then the Red Cross or divisions are also responsible for achieving division-wide readiness goals related to response capacity. So this is where your division team, the capability work groups, will be there to assist and support the regions in meeting their goals. Which, if the regions meet their goals, then the division will meet the division goals. And then also, the division is also responsible for facilitating the coordination and participation of partners. And this facilitation and coordination, we're not talking about really local partners. We're talking about more statewide partners and national partners, and helping connect them with individuals within the regions if there's regional activities or territory activities. So it's really that additional level of support and facilitation from a partner level that the division has a responsibility for. And then Red Cross regions. Red Cross regions are responsible for implementing the response program throughout the region, and they have to implement it in a way that is in alignment with program doctrine and established metrics. And then the regions lead and manage the response programs. And then also, just like the divisions are responsible for division-wide capacity building, regions are responsible for region-wide achievement of those response capacity building goals. And then regions are responsible for providing program feedback from the territories and the region to the division. So again, that stepping stone that we talked about. Territories provide feedback to the regions provide feedback to the division, and the division provides feedback to national headquarters. And that is how national headquarters will ensure that they're receiving that feedback and they're able to continually improve our programs so that they, one, serve our clients in the best manner possible, and are efficient and effective in how they're being implemented and how they can be implemented at a territory and regional level. And then our Red Cross territories. We've said it many times that the Red Cross territories is where service delivery occurs. Service delivery does not occur at the regions. It does not occur at the division. It does not occur at national headquarters. Service delivery occurs at the territory level, and this is why territories are responsible for executing response services, and they have to be in alignment with program doctrine and established metrics. So the territories are there. They're the ones that execute these response services. And the territories, again, are responsible for ensuring coordination and participation of local partners. Those are your government partners, your other NGOs, and things of that nature. And then, just like everybody else, they're responsible for the achievement of their capacity building goals within the territory. And then they provide feedback on programs to the region. So as I started this conversation regarding roles and responsibilities, I talked about we all need to understand and work within and understand what our role is within this new structure. Now, we all have a responsibility. All of us have a responsibility to provide feedback, to share ideas, share thoughts up the chain so we can get those incorporated into new programs. But like myself in the division, my role and responsibility is to provide support, facilitation support, guidance to the regions. That is my role in the division. The region is responsible for implementing these response services programs, and the territory is responsible for executing those programs. And again, we're all responsible for sharing feedback as we get it up and ideas as we get it up through the proper channels. But the way that this ship is going to work moving forward is that we all understand our roles and we all work within our roles for the greater good, which is serving our clients and fulfilling our mission. So that's just an important thing to always keep in mind. You know, I know this is a change within the organization. A lot of times we had been developing programs and measuring programs at the local level, but now we're moving towards a direction. Again, we've been moving in for several years now, but it is a long process. But we're moving in the direction of ensuring that we're all operating consistently around the country. Again, you're going to have to, once you get your program doctrine, you will have the ability within that doctrine, within sort of those guidelines, to be able to tailor that program to make it fit your local community. Because we understand communities are going to be different. They're, a sheltering program may look slightly different in Texas than it will in Montana or something like that. But it's important to know you've got to stay with the doctrine, but you will have that sort of that flexibility within that doctrine to make it fit within your communities as long as you are basically in alignment with the program. So that's why the focus at the territory level is on executing, taking it, making it work, and executing it within your community, and then sharing that feedback back up if something is not working, so it can be changed from an organizational perspective. Let me look in the chat feature really quick. Okay, so I've got a number of questions. These are great. So the first question is someone asked me to explain blue sky versus gray sky. So that's a great question. When we're talking about blue sky versus gray sky, we're really talking about sort of steady state roles, non-disaster roles, meaning blue sky. So when the sky is blue, there's no disasters. That's really talking about how we operate on a day-to-day basis. So I'll give you an example from my perspective. My blue sky role, when there are no disasters, I'm the division disaster director. We have RDPOs for blue sky positions. We've got disaster program managers for blue sky positions. Our gray sky positions, when disasters occur, we shift into our operational model where we have a director, a deputy director for that operation, and then a mass care manager and all those types of things. So those are gray sky roles and responsibilities, which again, we only implement during larger scale relief operations. And question, how are divisions sharing capability work group activities with other divisions? Are the same disaster capability work groups in each division? So we've got, we've got a lot of documents out there regarding the capability work groups, but yes, I can tell you a couple of different things. One, in general, each division has the same capability work group. So each division will have a respond capability work group and an information management and situational awareness capability work group. And I think there's about 10 of them. And so what we're working to right now on a division perspective is establishing networks amongst the divisions to ensure there is collaboration between, let's say, I'm going to talk about the respond capability work group. So when we have a respond capability work group in the swarm division, we want to make sure that there are linkages between the respond work group in swarm and the respond group in the Pacific division. So that's important so we can establish those linkages so again, we can ensure that we are all working in concert with one another. And that's a responsibility for me particularly, and the rest of the division team, is to ensure those linkages are there and to ensure those capability work groups also have linkages to our folks at national headquarters. Again, this will all ensure that we're working in concert with our overall goals. And the capability work groups are also, we're establishing protocols right now to sort of establish some guidelines for how the capability work groups are going to share information back down with the region. So the regions will request support, they'll work on it and share that back out with the regions. And we're working on that to ensure that it is consistent. And also there was a question of what we mean by response program. So what I'm talking about response program is anything that deals directly with disaster response. So this is as to the most local level on our disaster action teams, that is a response program. We are responding to a fire, opening shelters, feeding, and things like that. When we're talking about response, we're talking about any time that we initiate a response to a disaster. These are the types of services that we have within our services that we can provide, regardless of the scale of the disaster. Now, obviously, sometimes the services won't be needed on certain disasters, but these are the services that we provide. So a response program is things that we do when we initiate a disaster, and it's usually that initiating that disaster until we start moving into sort of a recovery program. Another question was, does territory equal chapter? In some areas, a territory boundary does fall along a chapter boundary. In some areas, a territory boundary does not. But in general, a territory is any geographic area that a disaster program manager covers. That's the definition of a territory. So whatever, if you're a disaster program manager and you look at the counties or jurisdiction that you cover, then that is your territory. That's how that equates. And there was a question regarding a timeline for how we can expect to receive document and how is that managed and prioritized, and I'm going to be sharing that in just a moment. Let's see. And someone asked regarding the DRM team members are still de facto members of the capability work groups. That's a question that we're still working out. We want to ensure that the DRM team members have access to those groups, and that is something that we are still working out, and I'll make sure that gets shared back with the DRM team members. So those are the questions that I have right now. Please keep them coming. These are great. So we're going to go ahead and move on to sort of our next component of the presentation. And let's see. But please keep them coming, and I'll check back every so often. So within the document, and there's not enough, and I didn't want to go through all of them on this presentation. They identify within our Respond program, again, the Respond program that deals with when we initiate a response to a disaster, there are defined program characteristics, examples of program characteristics, and then metrics. Now, what you won't see yet are measurements, and that's how are we going to measure success in our response programs. That is still being worked on, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment. But I'm going to give you some examples of characteristics of what the organization wants to see within a fully functional response program. And again, these are just examples. They're totally not all of them, because there's a whole bunch in the document. But basically, the client's immediate disaster cause needs are met. Clients with serious human needs are seamlessly transitioned to recovery services, and then response services engage and utilize local volunteers. And then that our responses are overall cost effective, and we're working within our procedures to do that. So again, these are characteristics of a program. None of these we don't have measurements on each one of these. As we start to work in the metrics, then from the metrics we'll work to develop how we actually measure those. But this is in general what the characteristics will be. Metrics, again, are still going to be high level, not down to the measurement level yet for exactly what does this equate to on a success perspective. But so an example of a metric that is being developed is that clients and stakeholders' immediate disaster cause needs are met regardless of the scale of the disaster event. And then from this, once we have these metrics, this is where the organization will work to sort of identify and develop a standard measurement. So how do you measure success that clients and stakeholders have their disaster cause needs met regardless of the scale of disaster? That is still being worked on. How do we measure that success? Same thing for, how do we measure that disaster workers are providing timely and accurate information to clients? And that how do we measure that the disaster workforce is empowered to meet the immediate disaster cause needs of clients and stakeholders? Some of this is going to be probably done through surveys, our CAP surveys, things like that. All of that is still being retooled and redefined to ensure that we're doing that in the most effective way possible. But just know that this is the intention within our Respond program, as well as any of our other programs, is to have a clearly defined program characteristics, and then metrics, and then measurements for success, so that you will be able to see at the end of a response, whether it's a large-scale response or at the end of a block of time period on your smaller-scale responses, your DAT team responses, after the data has come in, you'll be able to look back and say, have we met the organizational goals for success on these metric items? And again, I don't know what the measurements look like yet. Those are still under development, but this is just to give you an idea of the direction that we're going. So it will really be, the intention of our programs is to be results focused. So it's not just enough that we go out and provide these services, but we have to provide them well. And I think that's important for all of us. We all want to do a great job, and I think we do a great job in a number of areas. And this is an important aspect of any of our programs to ensure that we can measure that success. So we're not just working off of anecdotes. We actually have hard data that can go back. And then if something is not succeeding, if it is below that measurement, we can then collectively take action to identify the problem and develop a solution. So the relationship of the response framework to other mission areas. So the core processes of prepare, respond, and recover obviously there's transitions between each one of those activities. So obviously preparedness, we're really talking about most of our preparedness activities happen before the disaster strikes, but there will be components within the respond program where preparedness is activated during DROs, during gray sky activities. And so example of what that looks like. So I'll give you an example. That we had a region, and I'll use I think this was back in spring. There was a couple of tornadoes that happened just east of the Dallas area in Texas. And the region responded. They initiated the same kind of response services that we've been talking about in this presentation. But one thing they also did was they initiated preparedness activities as well. And so what the preparedness activities look like in this response program was they went to areas that were not heavily impacted by the tornadoes, but they went to areas along the periphery, along those boundaries, people that maybe had a tree down on the yard, some shingles off, and they went and talked to those individuals about preparing for future disasters. So while they had an engaged audience, because they just had the storm move through a couple of days ago, and people were willing to listen to a preparedness message, they engaged them in that area. The thing we have to look at in how we administer preparedness activities during the response component is we have to do so in a way that is sensitive to clients. You know, if someone's house is just completely burned down and we, go and start talking to them about, well, this is how you could have prevented this to happen in the first place, that is not going to be a sensitive message. And so providing preparedness information during the disasters is going to have to be done in a very, very consistent, deliberate, and sensitive manner to ensure that we're not chiding anybody regarding some of their pre-disasters decisions or level of preparedness or things like that. And then recovery, the transition between response and recovery is going to be somewhat gray for a while, and it will be, and it's designed to be that way. Obviously, there's not, on a relief operation, there's not one day you go to sleep in a response mode and the next day you're completely into recovery mode. We know that it's different. It's different for individuals, it's different for families, and it's different for communities, and each people move through that process at a different pace. And so we have to be aware of that, and we're trying to build the response programs in a way that doesn't force everybody into the recovery mindset at one given date, but that allows us to work with clients and communities individually to help transition them into that recovery process once sort of their response, those immediate needs have been met. And that's going to be different for each individual. So there will be sort of an overlap in a gray area and a transitional period between response and recovery, and it will be different for each individual that's been impacted by the disaster. So let me go back to the chat feature here really quick. So our question was, are the capability work groups developing measurements? If so, is there an ETA for the release of measurements? So at this time, we don't have the capability work groups developing measures, because the important thing is we want to ensure that whatever measurements are put out on a national perspective. Because these are all of our programs, every service that we provide is now a national program, or it will be when we start continually moving through this reengineering effort. So we want to make sure that we're measuring them consistently from a national perspective. So at this time, I'm not anticipating the capability work groups to develop measurements. What you may see is a capability work group, something is basically pushed to the capability work groups to work on solutions around measurements. But then my understanding will be is that those measurements will then be pushed back up and then developed and then finalized at an organizational nationwide perspective. So with that, I've got no ETA on the release of measurements at this time. What I do expect, actually, regarding that, we are still working, this is another little update that's coming up, we are still working on an organizational perspective on the FY15 DRCF, and that's the Disaster Readiness Capacity Framework document. In the past, this has been an Excel spreadsheet that each region is required to develop a couple of scenarios and put in all their capacity and all those types of really detailed information. The new format of the capability work groups, I'm sorry, of the DRCFs, the capacity frameworks, is that it will be based on and built off of a SharePoint platform. So you'll no longer have to submit Excel documents, and it'll be basically you'll be able to submit your information on a web-based platform and then update it as you go. And from there, my understanding, and again, I have heard about some of the stuff, and I've seen some draft things back and forth, but I believe that when the DRCF is released, which I believe it should be coming out in September, that there will be some established program metrics as well as some measurements for disaster cycle services programs at a regional level. We talked about some of the metrics there. I showed you some of the metrics. I have not seen the measurements for what those are yet. But my anticipation is that, at least the conversations that are occurring right now, is that that should be available at some point, some of that, hopefully within September when the DRCF is released. And now for those of you regions who are thinking, oh gosh, it's September and I have to have the first quarter is over in September, so am I going to be required to submit everything, by October 1st or something? And the answer is no. You'll be, the DRCF will come out in September. You'll be asked over the next couple months to put your information in, but the first reporting requirement won't come in until January, because the DRCF is now moving from a report that you have to submit every quarter to a report that you have to submit basically twice a year, at the midpoint of the year and at the end of the fiscal year. I did have a question regarding a project plan calendar timeline that we could share regarding various projects being worked on and updates coming. Yes, there is. And I'll send you guys out the link. And this is actually a link on the neighborhood regarding all of the process teams that are in place, and the timelines and the status updates for what everything is going on within the organization. And there are a lot of different projects that are currently underway. So what I will do when I send a link out about the YouTube video, I will send that out to you guys as well. So you guys will be able to bookmark that site and check back in regularly regarding the status of each one of those programs. And it will also, it's an ongoing list of all the programs. So even as programs get closed out, they are still on the list for you guys to go see what has already been completed. Another great example is to keep track of is the change index. Everything that's rolling out in the organization is updated to the change index. So I would strongly encourage, and I'll send this link out again for you guys to bookmark the change index. That's where you can go to find information as it's being released to the organization. Another question, are there any plans to pull DRCF staffing numbers from Volunteer Connection? At this time, I'm not sure about that, because I know where we stand on how we're using Volunteer Connection to categorize volunteers is not standard across the country. I know the intention is to get it standard across the country, but I know we're not there yet. So at this point, I don't have an answer regarding are we going to be pulling DRCF staffing numbers from Volunteer Connection. But it's a good question. So the question I had from another is that the role of the capacity work groups is not setting measurements, and if program guidance and framework, what are the division capability work groups responsible for? The division capability work groups are responsible for support. They're there to help and be solutions-based teams for the regions. So they're subject matter leader teams. They're there to help regions administer, implement, and then execute their programs. So they will be driven. The work that the capability work groups will be providing will be driven from the regions. And so one of the things that we'll do is we will give you guys out some examples of some projects that the capability work groups are working on, so that you all will have the understanding of what kinds of things you can submit up to the capability work groups. But the capability work groups are there for your support as the frontline implementers and executors of our program services. And question regarding any updates on resource and personnel typing. I'll get to that in just a moment. So some other things going on in other response materials that are under development. There are job tools that are being developed to support our workforce in implementing the program and delivering response services. Those are various job tools that are going to be coming out here over the next few months. Also, new training products, so training on our response services, and then you'll also get down to the training products on activities within the response services, so sheltering, feeding, all of those types of things are under development. Also, the release of new or enhanced technology systems. So one of the technology things that we're currently working on, I should be able to have, I'm hoping to have an update for you on this by our next monthly all-hands call next month, which is sort of using technology to better share situational awareness within the organization. So that is something sort of that newer enhanced technology system that's currently under development that I hope to be able to share with you some more details on that coming up at our next all-hands call. And then an enhanced workforce strategy. So how do we engage volunteers in leadership positions? How do we utilize event-based volunteers for these response programs? So it's really enhancing our ability to utilize our local leaders to run response programs regardless of the size of the disasters. And then in the next 6 months, so what we're anticipating to see in the next 6 months is, again, more doctrine, more training products regarding to sheltering, feeding, health and mental health, distribution, and staff wellness programs. This is sort of the focus within sort of the training and doctrine folks right now within the next 6 months. And they range from new documents like our Respond Program Essentials, which gets further down, which builds a little bit more on the foundational document, and then also training tools for shelter managers and other things in between that. So it's not just those two, but there's many things in between that I would expect to see within the next 6 months. So let me go back to a couple questions to see if we have anything else coming up. No, nothing so far. So I'm going to work on to our concept of operations updates. Now, again, this is sort of transitioning from the Respond framework more into sort of the tactical approach for how we run gray sky relief operations. And this is, again, related to our concept of operations. So, when we went out and taught the ConOps class, the 2-day session around the division, starting back in March and all the way working up through June, this is before the information was cemented from our doctoring team. And so what you're going to see now coming out is you're going to see a ConOps program essentials document that really talks about how we structure a relief operation and the roles and responsibilities of people within that larger scale relief operation. And this is, again, where we're adapting ICS principles and applying it to a Red Cross model. So you've got, finance, logistics, operations, planning, director, deputy director, that type of model, and it will really define how we respond in those types of events. Also, standards and procedures documents. So your program essentials is sort of that foundational document for our concept of operations. Your standards and procedures documents then adds more, more meat to the bones and adds more things to it. And then from what you'll see after this is job tools, which will further refine it. So again, just like you're building a house, we build the foundation with the program essentials document. The standards and procedures is your framework. Some job tools will start to add, drywall and a roof and things like that. And so eventually, at the end of the process, you'll have a fully complete picture of how we respond to disaster. So you're also going to see SITREP, the Incident Action Plan, and other reporting tools that are going to be coming out. And these are in the final stages of development. And then information reporting standards and procedures documents. So this is how we report information on a relief operation. So this is going to be really important to our planning folks. And anyone who ever works with the 5266, situation reporting and things like that, and how everyone has responsibilities to get that data in, this is going to be defined within the information reporting standards and procedures documents. And I will tell you that once these documents are released, don't think that that's the final stage, that everything is then, it's carved in stone. No, the intention of this entire process is as we release documents and as we test them out, as we try them out, as we, stand up relief operations, we find that something doesn't work, then we've got to go back to the table and say, well, how can we tweak this to best fit our needs? So again, that's that process that I went back into the framework where territories send feedback to the regions, and the regions to the divisions, and the divisions to national for an overall continuous improvement of all of our programs, job tools, and activities. So let me jump to questions really quick to see if we have any. Nope, nothing so far. So I'm going to go on to some of our disaster cycle services updates. So I do want to share, we do have some new trainings that are released, and I'll send out the link to the Change Index because, again, everything is on the Change Index. It's a great resource to keep engaged and up to speed of what's going on in the organization, and it is open to anybody that has access to the exchange. So some new trainings that we have that are now released, we've got a supply fundamentals. So anyone in the logistics, we've got a supply fundamentals course that is out there now, an IKD fundamentals that's out there. We also have a basic instructor fundamentals course. This is the basic instructor fundamentals course really replaces sort of that pre-work that individuals have done. They're required to take sort of that self-assessment tool prior to taking the DIS class. And what you will see coming out here shortly is a replacement of the DIS class as well. And there's some more information on the exchange and has also been sent out regarding some changes to disaster training that will be taking place over the next, I think it was, 7 or 8 months. And then recovery services and overview, an overview of how we provide overall recovery services. Also on the exchange, there's a new training index. And training index is a catalog of all of our current courses. I'll send this link out as well so you guys can bookmark that as well. Again, these are tools that you guys can use to help keep you, your regions, your territories, and your volunteers engaged and up to speed on the changes that are ongoing in the organization. Because I'll tell you, and we all know this, there's a lot of change going on. There's a lot of new programs that are rolling out, and I anticipate this to continue. The reality is that we have a culture of change within the organization, and that is just a culture that we're always going to be in. We always have to continue to refine and improve our programs to ensure that we're staying relevant in today's world. So if we develop a program today, that program may not meet the needs of our communities 5 years from now or even 2 years from now. So we have to continue and really commit to being okay with this level of change and really just embracing it and working within it, because it is here to stay, and it is the role of the division, the role of regions to help support folks at the local level in implementing and executing these programs. So some other updates, I think these are going to be some really good resources to use at your local level to be aware of. These are a new national MOU and some collaboration agreements that have just been released also on the exchange, on the Change Index. There's the National Council on Independent Living. This is the National Council on Independent Living has offices or partner agencies throughout the Swarm Division. And this is an organization that, through our partnership, will commit to working with us on how to best provide functional access needs, particularly for people in shelters, but during disasters in general. So, this is a big issue in the sheltering world. And so this is a resource where, again, we don't have to be the subject matter experts on this. We can go to our partner to help them and ask for their advice and their guidance on how can we troubleshoot some of these issues that arise in our communities regarding functional access needs, and how can we best ensure that these individuals with these needs are cared for in the best possible way. So the National Council on Independent Living, we've got a new MOU that's just recently been signed in the past few weeks with them. It's also up on the Change Index, so I encourage you guys to read it, look through it. There are responsibilities that both at a national, divisional, regional, and territory level that we all have, and responsibility for the engagement on this MOU. And then we also have a collaboration agreement. It's not an MOU, but it's a collaboration agreement with Portlight Strategies. Now, Portlight Strategies is a group that's been active on a number of operations, large disaster operations within the Swarm Division over the past few years. And what the Portlight Strategies can do, and part of their collaboration, is to work with us to help identify resources during a disaster for functional access needs equipment. So if you're looking at chair risers, at walkers, at bariatric cots, things like that, maybe we don't have an inventory of, we can work with our partners at Portlight Strategies to identify and try to get some of those resources to help outfit our shelters to meet those functional access needs. So both of these things are great resources. I encourage you guys to share it with your health services workers and other leadership level individuals and other shelter folks within your territories and regions, because they are a resource for you to help execute sheltering programs and health services programs and things of that nature. So a couple of upcoming events I want to share with you guys. It's again also on the exchange. We've got an ArcGIS mapping class. It's an online basics. It's this afternoon at 3:30. We've also got the next Home Fire Preparedness Campaign web conference is on the 25th. Notice that time is in Eastern, so adjust for your time schedule. And then also the Disaster Mental Health Fundamentals webinar is on September 10th, again also Eastern at 6 o'clock. And this mental health fundamentals webinar is a requirement for all mental health workers. Now, some have already have it, so you don't need to take it, but this is an opportunity from a nationwide perspective to get some of that training for any of the mental health folks that you have in your area. And so now here's sort of a schedule for the upcoming releases over the next, over the rest of August and in September. Don't be surprised if some of these dates get moved back slightly occasionally. I don't have any knowledge that that's going to happen, but just, be flexible with it. So August, what we've got coming up is we've got more home fire preparedness campaign job tools. Those are going to be coming out. Also a new casework and recovery planning course, so helping individuals and communities plan from a casework and recovery perspective. And then a feeding procurement with Southern Baptist and standards and procedures. So how do we procure food from Southern Baptist, and then our updated MOU. And then in September, we're expecting a disaster responder information guide and deploy fundamentals course. So this is coming out within the next 45 days. Also, an Oklahoma MARC, that case study, that is the Multi-Agency Resource Center, which is in a number of different areas. We call it, a Joint Assistance Center and other types of things. The terminology that the organization as a whole is going to is MARC, a Multi-Agency Resource Center. So we're going to put out the case study, and this will be something that we're going to be really pushing in FY15, is that, to really educate our partners, both our government partners and our local non-governmental partners, on what a MARC is and the value of a MARC and the role of the Red Cross as the convener of the community in establishing a MARC. So again, we have to educate people in advance, our communities in advance of a MARC, so that the MARC concept will be more successful during future disasters. And then we just talked about the Respond framework. We already have the Recovery framework. The Prepare framework will also be released in September, which will establish sort of that foundation for how we administer, for what types of programs we will work on within our preparedness activities. And then more home fire preparedness campaign job tools. And I would encourage you guys, if you have questions regarding what some of those multiple tools will be, I encourage you guys to attend the campaign webinar on Monday. I do know they plan on outlining what some of those forthcoming tools will be, and it's related to some of the things are programmatic, some of the things are related to fundraising, as well as communication strategies with media. All those types of things are being developed. And then also a staff wellness standards and procedures course is being released. So that will be out in September as well. But again, there are many more things that are coming out over the next 6 months regarding, shelter manager training, bulk distribution type materials, other documents and things like that. So the intention of the Respond framework is to set that foundation. Now that we have the foundation, you're going to start seeing more information that starts to build a picture of what the whole house looks like. So that is coming up here over the next 6 months. Let me go to the chat feature, see if we have any questions. Let's see. Yeah, I had some people ask if we can email those dates. Yeah, I'm going to send out, you'll get an email this afternoon that'll have all this information, because I know I've gone pretty fast. And so don't worry about writing all this stuff out. What you will also get is a video of this presentation as well. But I'll make sure that you guys get that out. I'm also going to send you the links to where these upcoming events will actually be are posted on a regular basis on the exchange, so you guys can check back on a regular basis. And I'm going to jump back to a question I'd received a few ago, which was any updates on the resource and personnel typing. So the resource and personnel typing, which is sort of a discussion regarding how we sort of our old DSHR sort of groups, our group and activities and things like that, that is still being worked on. I know that is a big process for how we sort of retype individuals within the organization. Like I said, we know that these are the activities we're going to be doing. How we certify someone as capable or qualified to be in one of those activities, that is all sort of being reworked and changed. I don't have a map for a guideline for what that looks like yet. I do still anticipate that we're probably it will not be until the far end of hurricane season before we start to see some movement come out about it. I know it's under work right now, but until we start seeing some more discussions around it. So I would, hold off, until end of November, December, until that's when I'm anticipating to have information from that process team that we can start to share out regarding that movement on that accord. Let's see. So at this point, I've got no other questions that are coming through. And obviously I know folks may have to leave at 11 o'clock, but I'm going to keep open if you guys have any other questions. For as long as you guys need it. So any other questions that you guys have regarding this or upcoming releases within disaster cycle services? Okay, hearing none, then I've got 10:59 on the dot. So thank you all very much and have a great weekend.